Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The question went to the heart of whether the special relationship should become more or less special. Nigel Farage, there are clear and very vocal concerns about the character of Donald Trump, which have been raised by some on this platform. Jo Swinson initially raised them in her opening statement. How do you respond directly to that, and are you comfortable being his friend?
Well, Obama brought him a so-called Muslim ban, but no one criticised him. He was the one that named the 7 countries where a total stop on anyone coming into America should come from. Trump implemented it. And so these really, in many cases, are very, very false arguments. Look, Donald Trump's style is very American. It may not be to everybody's taste, but just think about this. He is our most important friend in the world, and at a time of huge global uncertainty, we should think about not just trade with America, but security, and making sure that NATO is not destroyed by the European Union. These things really matter. And can I just say, the biggest lie of this entire election campaign is that Trump wants to buy the NHS. He does not, and he will say so, I'm sure, this week when he's here.
We're going to talk about that very shortly, but Jo Swinson wanted to come in on that.
Look, Nigel, you've just tried to defend Donald Trump. You're saying, oh, well, these things aren't what he said. When we've all seen the footage of him talking and boasting about sexually assaulting women.
I was talking about Obama and your so-called Muslim.
Answer the point on Trump. Have you seen the footage of him boasting about sexually assaulting women?
And it was crass and it was crude and it was wrong. And men say dreadful things sometimes. But the point here...
It's just all right then.
No, they do. They do. But you know something?
In particular.
If all of us were caught out for what we did on a night out after a drink...
I'm sorry, is that what you do on a night out after a drink? Is that what you do on a night out after a drink, Nigel?
I'm sure you've lived the purest life of anybody.
And never said a
word wrong about anything anywhere.
What about chanting send her home?
Nicola Sturgeon.
American-born congresswomen. What about those rallies where they're shouting send her home?
Listen, American politics is, in fact, more divided in many ways than our politics. But all these false claims, you may not like him.
He
is president of the USA, and that relationship matters. You are so anti-American. You're prepared to put your hatred of Trump above our national interests, and that's a big mistake.
Well, Donald Trump, amongst many other things, demonises immigrants, so it's no wonder Nigel Farage really likes him.
Just like Obama before.
Well, no.
Just like Obama brought the
fact of the matter is,
you never attacked Obama, did you?
There is a trend in politics today of strongman politics. We've got Nigel Farage, we've got Boris Johnson, we've got Donald Trump. That, in my view, is not what the UK or any part of it needs. Donald Trump's attitudes, I think, are wrong and they're dangerous. And in Boris Johnson, we've got somebody who's trying to be like him. That, I think, is the wrong way to go. And people in this country, people in Scotland, have a big choice to make. Are we going to allow our future to be dominated and decided by the Trump-Johnson-Farage axis, or are we going to choose something much better for the future of our country, for this generation and those who come after us?
Well, I think take a step back. This is not a US presidential election. We're here to debate the issues in British politics. If you take a step back, why is he here? He's here because of a NATO summit to discuss our security.
Would you
that is something that is incredibly important. The relationship we have with America is incredibly important for keeping us safe. The intelligence that is shared keeps all of us safe every single day. And that's not something to turn your nose at. It's something that we should be welcoming. But I'd say this. It is important when we're electing a British Prime Minister that they are someone who's not able to sustain that relationship, but they are also able to sustain those alliances that keep us safe. NATO is something that I believe, and my party believe, is crucial to global security. Jeremy Corbyn has described something that is a threat to global security and a danger that should be abolished.
Thank you. I'm going to just bring in Adam Price, and then I'll bring in Richard Berger to respond.
The truth is, the words we use matter, whether in public or in private, I mean, it can never be acceptable for a man to talk about grabbing a woman's pussy. And, if you think it is, you should be ashamed of yourself. And look, who else would the sad reality is this as well. We have a Prime Minister who referred to gay men like myself, as bum boys in tank tops, referred to Muslim women looking like letterboxes. This is actually creating the climate, right, where abuse becomes acceptable, whether it's abuse of women or of minorities, and that's why neither Trump nor Boris Johnson are fit to be in public.
Okay, respond directly to Adam Price.
Adam, I think when it comes to LGBT rights, the Prime Minister's record is very clear.
Come on.
He was the first.
Defend those comments. You can't defend those comments.
He did not mean to cause
offence.
Nicola, I'm not trying to answer. His record on LGBT rights is clear. He was the first leading Conservative politician to come out in favour of same-sex marriage. He rebelled against his party to repeal Section 28, and as Foreign Secretary, he changed the rules so that pride flags could fly across our embassies all over the world. So that is a record that I am proud to stand behind.
Okay, can I, for just a moment, Joe Swinson, because I do need to bring in Richard Bergen on this, and a particular question about your leader's relationship with the President of the United States. Last time, when he visited the United Kingdom, he declined an invitation to attend a state dinner with Donald Trump. Would you attend a dinner with Donald Trump?
I wouldn't attend a state dinner with Donald Trump. I think Jeremy was right at the time to do what he did. What we need in a Prime Minister and in a government is a government that, yes, has a good relationship with the United States of America and other countries, but also a government and a Prime Minister that thinks for themselves. Jeremy Corbyn was correct to oppose George Bush's order that we should join the Iraq war. In the same way, Jeremy was correct to oppose the NATO-led bombing of Libya, which hasn't made things better in Libya. It's made things worse. It's caused a refugee crisis. There's human trafficking there. Slavery has come back in Libya. So yes, we need to be allies with the United States of America. Our quarrel and difference isn't with the people of the United States of America. Our quarrel and difference is with some of the policies of Donald Trump, who, like Boris Johnson, is a politician who's giving the green light to sexism, homophobia and racism.
Okay.
And that cannot be allowed to flourish.
It is Monday, the 2nd of December of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. We've had a lot of time between, Thursday, since that would be Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays, which was also Thanksgiving Day. I apologize for not doing a Friday show. It was a holiday. I had anticipated doing one, but, what's the anecdote about something about valor or something before valor? Well, nonetheless, I apologize for not having a Friday show, but I sure hope you understand. All right. I needed to recharge my batteries, and it was good. So, a little sad Thanksgiving, of course. It's been a year of firsts, and this was the first Thanksgiving without my son. And so that was kind of sad. Though the dinner and gathering at my sister's was quite lovely. My Trump bro just briefly brought up how we have to get rid of Obamacare, and then just as soon as anybody tried to disagree, he shut down that conversation by saying we're not supposed to talk politics on Thanksgiving. And he gave his little wry smile, and no one talked about politics after, but he got his politics in and shut everybody else up. Exactly what the Trump bros and the Trump organization and the whole Trump cult is attempting to do here as the impeachment gathers more steam, and I guess articles are going to be given to judiciary. Trump has, through his legal counsel, whoever that is now, it's not Rudy. At least he didn't go through Rudy with this one. Informed the Judiciary Committee that he will not be attending because it is so partisan. It's all against him. Well, you know, when you're getting impeached, it's not because people love you. All right? So you can go and defend yourself or pretend that it has no legitimacy because, well, as my Trump bro explained on how he got rich, he decided that he wasn't going to follow the rules that everybody else followed. You know, like not lying to people about a lemon that he's selling them. And then saying, hey, buyer beware. Now get out of here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make any kind of familial disruptions known here in the greater world, but used car salesmen have a certain tendency that you might call a universal among used car salesmen. And if you don't know the rules, you can always say, hey, I just don't need to follow the rules. You know, rules like honesty. When a contract's signed, it's a valid contract. How about one of those? Well, in this Trump world, this guy knows nothing about American history, doesn't know anything about American civics, and he takes his orders when he's not arbitrarily deciding things out of a peak. He takes his orders from on high. And I don't mean the sky god up there. I'm talking about Vladimir Putin. Yes, Trump is an asset of Vladimir Putin. He was installed by Vladimir Putin in the presidency of the United States, and we need to stop denying that. We're not going to convince the Cult 45 Trump bros. And even if they accepted it, they would pretty much accept it as like being a good thing. Well, yeah, Vlad's a good guy. And all you socialist commies are going to, well, they tell us that they're going to eliminate us, while at the same time charging us as being violent because we want to vote them out of office. That's how violent we are. And that is a scary proposition. And we've got a lot of stories about how powers are arrayed to pretty much let them hold on to power if they can. I still maintain that vast majorities of people going out to vote will upset the margins that Vlad and the GOP count on. They can only win when there's just margins, a small amount to manipulate. They can't manipulate the gross amounts of people voting. We need to overwhelm them with numbers, so 70,000 votes spread over 3 counties and 3 states does not decide the election again. And it's not going to be the same 3 states or counties this time. That's another thing we got to wrap our heads around, and that's why I'm seeing very many, fortunately, I'm seeing very many election supervisors in various counties and states saying we are going to paper. Especially since Ivanka got how many patents for voting machines? And then she sold them to 19 states. And they want to go after Joe Biden's son. Well, I think that's a bunch of malarkey. Don't you? What's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy post-Thanksgiving Day. I'm not going to call it a special. We're just a regular day now because every day is special. And our special dish today is River City Hash Mondays. And we've taken everything from last Thursday up to now and diced it and sliced it and made it into a gourmet dish for your gourmet delight. Indeed. Well, on the rest of the menu, actually at the top, that was Brexit leader Nigel Farage. Well, he all of a sudden decided to defend Trump's sexual assault remarks and his racist immigration policies by what? Go to the old standby. attack Obama while giving Putin a pass. It's not just here. Okay? We have to understand Brexit would not have passed if it had not been manipulated by some Cyrillic writing individuals. Because Cyrillic is a written language, not a spoken, so just so you know. On the rest of the menu, Trump's trade war has wreaked havoc on farm equipment sales. Well, yeah, he doesn't like the small farmer. He wants everything to be, the corporate farm. If we're going to have farms owned by Americans to begin with, I think it's going to be another one of those franchises that gets doled out by dear leader like they do in Russia. GOP-controlled states are not publicizing the census because Republicans are worried about losing seats during redistricting. Well, of course they are. And former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley shamed acting Deputy DHS Secretary Ken Cuccinelli out of a D.C. pub because, according to O'Malley, silence is irresponsible. And he is right. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where tens of thousands of Poles protested for the rule of law after a prominent judge was suspended by the white nationalist ruling party. And gunmen opened fire on a car driven by a former Naftogas executive who was now a regional Ukrainian anti-corruption lawmaker, killing his 3-year-old son. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And I know that to those of you who listen to the show regularly, this is a broken record, and I do apologize. But, hey, we're not Pacifica Radio where you have hours and hours and hours of a fun drive every day of the year. And they need to, because it's Pacifica. But regardless, we need to put out this plaintive plea here daily, at least for a little bit, to remind folks that we have been broadcasting 24/7, 365 for over 8 years now. Because we are not only the hardest working internet radio station on the internet, but because of your grand generosity in, giving us recurring contributions about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink once a month. And we need more of you to do that, because we need to buy some newish machinery. And I have been getting notices on my little Dell here that I do a lot of the formatting on before I put it over to the MacBook to broadcast on. That this little Dell that's on Windows 7, that's how old this machine is, that all that software support and updates stop next month. So unfortunately, I don't have enough room to put in Windows 10. Got to get a newish machine to be able to continue on and hopefully, keep the viruses and all the stuff out there in the world out of the machine. Because apparently all that stops on January, or at least it's being phased out. And I guess I won't be able to use this machine, at least online. Regardless, your generosity over all these many years has allowed us to continue resisting as the founders originally intended. Yeah, even before the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America. And we thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and we thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam, and you could follow me there, because I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media for everybody's social media pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest. And pick up podcasts, which is probably one of the most important statements and suggestions we can make. You can pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Alrighty, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Well, Trump has always been at war against America, and he hates the small farmer because of the term small. The only people who have importance are those who have large land holdings like high-rises with your name on them. You know, every great leader should be putting their names on whatever they have because, damn it, otherwise they're not great leaders. And Trump lets you know that right in your face. This is out of the Associated Press, and usually the Associated Press has anonymous worker bees working for them. Deere's profit during the fourth quarter dropped 8%. Now, that's, of course, Deere Equipment, DEERE. And it issued a weak forecast for 2020 as U.S. trade disputes and bad weather squeeze its biggest customer, the American farmer. It's the first time that the manufacturer laid out its expectations for next year, and it sent shares down almost 4% at the opening bell. The company expects sales of agriculture and turf machinery to slide 5 to 10% compared with this year, and sales of construction and forestry equipment to fall 10 to 15%. Wow. That outlook, the company said, reflects slowing construction activity, which has been an area of strength. John Deere's performance reflected continued uncertainties in the agricultural sector, said CEO John May. Lingering trade tensions, coupled with a year of difficult growing and harvesting conditions, have caused many farmers to become cautious about making major investments in new equipment. Quarterly profits were at $722 million, or just about $2.27 per share. Adjusted per-share earnings were $2.14, a penny better than expected, according to a survey by Zacks Investment Research. Adjusted revenue was at $8.7 billion, also better than expected. Annual revenue rose 5%. to $39.26 billion. But that was overshadowed by the first peek into 2020. The Moline, Illinois company said last Wednesday that it expects to book profits of between $2.7 billion and $3.1 billion. That would be less than the $3.25 billion it made this fiscal year, even if it reaches the high end of its guidance. Farmers have pulled back on buying machinery with so much uncertainty about what comes next in the trade war between Trump and China, because this isn't against the United States and China, of course. We're just kind of following along as if we're shackled to this guy. I think we are. And, of course, the U.S. and China are the world's two biggest economies. Farmers in the Midwest and South, whose planting this year was interrupted by wet weather, got a break in the fall, though a few northern states have seen harvest prospects go from bad to worse. Early rain and snow in Minnesota and the Dakotas hampered an already difficult harvest. Deere was focused on factors it can control, and CEO May said, despite a tough environment right now, the longer-term outlook for the company is healthy, because if he says it's not, then they go out of business. even more anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Ash Mondays. With billions in federal aid and seats in Congress at stake, some states are dragging their feet in carrying out one of the Census Bureau's chief recommendations for making sure everyone is counted during the 2020 census. 5 states, Florida, Louisiana, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Texas, have not set up complete count committees that would create public awareness campaigns to encourage people to fill out the questionnaires. Well, the Republicans as a whole don't want you to watch the impeachment hearings because then you'd know. I mean, they don't want you to know. Of course they don't want you to know about the census. They don't want people counted when they reapportion those districts with the true count. Oh, my God. Do you think that those guys will hold on to power? And they're mostly guys, let's be clear. No, they won't. And they know it. That's why they've tried to keep people from voting. That's why they've tried to gerrymander these states so that they can hold on to their power during a census to make sure you don't know. The once-a-decade count of the U.S. population starts in January in a remote area of Alaska. Then the rest of the nation takes part starting in the spring. Census Bureau Director Stephen Dillingham said earlier this month that we are encouraging states to join. The clock is ticking and the time is now. 6 states, Iowa, Maine, Tennessee, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wisconsin only got on board in the past several weeks. Officials say the committees can separate census winners from losers. Complete count committees are extremely effective, said Albert Fontenot, an associate director at the Census Bureau. It's in the state's interest in that they get a funding flow and congressional seats. Of the holdout states, all but Louisiana have Republican governors. In Texas, a measure to create a committee died in the GOP-dominated legislature earlier this year, even though the second most populous state has the most to gain from the census, up to 3 congressional seats, but they know they won't be Republican. That's why they don't want you to know. Some Texas lawmakers were worried about losing their seats during reapportionment if population surges favored Democrats were found in urban and suburban areas. Also, at the time, the Trump administration was pushing to add a citizenship question to the form, and some lawmakers didn't want to take a stand on the issue by promoting the census. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked the question later. 26 state governments are appropriating nearly $350 million to reach people and get them to respond to the census. The amounts range from California's record $187 million to Montana's $100 grand. And New York is committing $40 million. States led by Democrats have spent more per capita because Democrats want you to know. Of the 11 states spending at least $1 per resident, all but North Dakota have Democratic governors, according to an Associated Press analysis. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Martin O'Malley, the former Maryland governor and presidential candidate, who on Wednesday had a heated exchange about immigration with Trump's acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli, spoke to Salon yesterday, Sunday, about his advice for Americans who want to stand up to Trump officials on immigration issues. Well, I, for one, would like to stand up to them on not only immigration issues, because there's about 100, 200, 300. How many more issues? Well, let's hit them on immigration because it is racist. I think silence in the face of the cruelty of caging children on our southern border is irresponsible, O'Malley said. We cannot be silent. In the face of this, the biggest threat to our American freedom is not dictatorship, it's our own public passivity and acceptance of cruelty and institutional violence practiced in our name and with our permission. We have an obligation to speak out, to call it like it is. And of course, many of us have been calling it like it is for generations now, because we do this quite often with people who are brown, black, especially if they're in what Trump calls shithole countries. The confrontation between O'Malley and Cuccinelli occurred Wednesday night at a Washington pub called the Dubliner during an unofficial meetup for alumni of Gonzaga College High School. The former Baltimore mayor criticized the Trump administration's policies of separating migrant children from their parents and of detaining immigrants in chain-link enclosures. And he later told the Washington Post in a text message that Cuccinelli is the son of immigrant grandparents who cages children for a fascist president. That was Martin O'Malley. His actions were praised by progressives like New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg, who tweeted on Thursday, "God bless Martin O'Malley." Is Michelle Goldberg publicly announced that she's a progressive? Come on, Rosa, what are you doing here? Now, Cuccinelli has a long history of anti-immigrant rhetoric and has been accused of white supremacism. In August, he said that the Statue of Liberty's greeting should be rewritten to read, "Give me your tired and your poor who can stand on their own 2 feet and who will not become a public charge." Cuccinelli is no poet, obviously. He also said that, in his opinion, the Statue of Liberty's message was meant solely for people coming from Europe. White people from Europe. He forgets that when his grandparents got here, they were not considered white. When asked what he would say to Trump if he had an opportunity to speak to him like he did Cuccinelli, O'Malley said that he would criticize the scapegoating and the racism that's being hurled at immigrant people, and the construction of large internment camps for penning up people that are primarily brown-skinned and Spanish-speaking. O'Malley described these things as an outrage that runs contrary to everything our country stands for, because O'Malley is a patriot. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The Little Woman. Slight spoilers. Martin Scorsese was recently asked why his film's protagonists have been mainly men. Failing to answer the question, he said instead, and I paraphrase, that if a story doesn't call for a lead female character, then shoehorning one in ends up being a waste of everyone's time. Well, now Scorsese begs the question that follows the question he did not answer. What do we do then when movie makers produce so many stories that don't call for women characters? You leave them out, as Martin suggests, that's so many women not on screen. Well, here's my suggestion. Work them in. Write characters for women that aren't a waste of time. Director James Mangold's Ford vs. Ferrari is about race car designer and businessman Carroll Shelby and designer and driver Ken Miles. From 1963 to 66, they worked for Ford Motors to juice the company and unseat Ferrari's racing dominance. The movie is written by brothers Jez and John Henry Butterworth and also by Jason Keller. It stars Matt Damon, Christian Bale, and what the heck is Catriona Balfe doing in this movie? Did she win consecutive People's Choice Awards for playing the lead in Outlander to lean on Christian Bale, look pretty, and do little else? At least she's not the fraught wife whose domestic priorities are her man's obstacle. Instead, she plays her flip side, the ultra-supportive wife, but in a really superficial way. She's there for a caress, a kiss, a meal at the right time, and a patient acceptance of the crap her husband pulls that drives everyone else mad. Where is the meat to their relations? Why does Ken have more scenes where he shares his core beliefs and dreams with his son than with his wife? I mean, even at the end, Matt Damon plays the film's final button in Carroll Shelby's big emotional moment, not with the adult wife of his best friend, but with this same 11-year-old boy. And I get it, Ford vs. Ferrari is not about Molly Miles. But I look and I think this is not a case of a story with no place for this character. This is a case of a character who has been placed out of this story. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American 60-Second Science. I'm Aline Augenbraun. Fossil footprints help tell us how ancient people lived, but such physical impressions are hard to find.
You get all of these footprints from different species in the same time period interacting, and you can't see them all the time. And some of them you can never see, with the eye that is, but we can still detect them with geophysical sensors.
Cornell University archaeologist Thomas Urban. He and colleagues used ground-penetrating radar, GPR, to detect invisible traces of footsteps in White Sands National Monument in New Mexico. Their GPR device goes back and forth over an area in a grid pattern, which ultimately creates a 2D radargram. The technique detects subtle differences in ground density. Speaking about one set of otherwise imperceptible animals' footprints, he says,
these were caused by compression of sediment beneath the animal's track, and they relate to the weight and momentum of the animal.
12,000 years ago, the White Sands area was a large, muddy flat, which was covered with footprints from various species. Urban is excited about the stories so many footsteps suggest. For example, the researchers found no evidence of shoes or sandals. They did find human and animal tracks crossing each other, which suggests the prints were left during a hunt. The findings are reported in the journal Scientific Reports.
This sort of unique setting, has recorded all of the daily movements of people in footprints. There are actually more than we even thought, because there are always some that aren't visible.
These techniques could be applied to older sites all around the world, perhaps even to find dinosaur tracks that have been sitting quietly waiting at long last to be found. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Aline Augenbraun.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Outbreaks of whooping cough, or pertussis, are happening across the United States. This serious respiratory disease can be deadly for babies. By getting the whooping cough vaccine, called Tdap, during the third trimester of each pregnancy, women can pass antibodies to their babies to help protect them until they're old enough to receive their own vaccine. Learn more at cdc.gov/pertussis/pregnant. That's pertussis, PERTUSSIS.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
$234,000 voters in Wisconsin are at risk of being thrown off the voting rolls. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. As reported by the Associated Press, quote, more than 234,000 Wisconsin voters would be unable to cast their ballots in next year's election or the primaries unless they register again before those elections. The reason? Voters who may or may not have moved receive a postcard from the state asking them to confirm their address. A lawsuit filed by a conservative law firm, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, insists that voters who do not respond to the postcard within 30 days must be thrown off the voting rolls. The Wisconsin Elections Commission, in contrast, says no. They have 2 years to respond to that postcard. Voter eligibility, for the most part, is a matter decided under state law, and this lawsuit is in state court. The people who would be most affected by the 30-day mandate are, of course, those who move, young people and poor people who have to move more often. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, in response to the lawsuit, said, quote, we should spend our time in making it easier for people to vote rather than making it more difficult. I'm hopeful that the lawsuit is thrown out. Oh, yes, the 234,000 voters, well, that's a consequential number in Wisconsin, a state that President Donald Trump won in 2016 by 23,000 votes. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2009. That was the day that Walmart agreed to pay $40 million to over 87,000 current and former employees in Massachusetts. This was the largest class action settlement in the state's history. The lawsuit, filed in 2001, accused the retail giant of denying workers rest and meal breaks. The company also allegedly refused to pay overtime, manipulated time cards, and required workers to work off the clock for free. In other words, Walmart was accused of wide-scale wage theft. The retail giant decided to settle the case rather than take it to trial. That was not too surprising, since the company had already settled 63 similar federal and state class action wage and hour lawsuits. The total tally Walmart paid out due to wage theft was a whopping $900 million. Under the terms of the Massachusetts agreement, any person who worked for Walmart from August 1995 to the settlement date received a payment between $400 and $2,500. The company was also required to put measures in place to ensure that wage theft stopped. This included a hotline that workers could call anonymously if they were made to skip meal breaks. Walmart also agreed to use a clock-out, lockout program that prevents workers from using store cash registers if they are not actually clocked in for work. In an affidavit filed with the settlement, the lead counsel for the employees said the accord dwarfs settlements of similar class actions against Walmart across the country. Not surprisingly, the company has strenuously resisted all efforts by its store employees to join and form unions. Wage theft, not getting paid for all of the hours you actually work, continues to be a major complaint of low-wage workers and is an important issue for today's labor movement. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, December 2nd, 2019. I'm Mark Boulanger. Labour activists are in Madrid attending a major UN conference on climate change. The conference, entitled COP25, is focused on making sure that UN climate conventions, including the Paris Agreement, are being implemented. I talked to Samantha Smith about climate change. Ms. Smith is the director of the Labour Movement's Just Transition Centre. I asked Ms. Smith why the Labour Movement is so concerned about climate change.
We think everybody should be concerned about climate change. And if we just look at some of the things that have happened recently with Hurricane Dorian, the wildfires that we're seeing in different countries, extreme heat events, for example, in France recently, as the world gets warmer, heat is going to be an issue for every single person who's working outside. So that's everybody from people working in agriculture and forestry through construction, street hawkers, anyone who spends most of their workday outside is already being affected by climate change, and that is going to continue in the future. We also have a lot of people who are on the very front lines of disaster relief and emergency response, our first responders. These are people, firefighters who are fighting wildfires, people responding to floods. All of those workers are also directly affected by climate change. And then finally, the government response to climate change, the response of employers, this also affects our people. People's jobs are going to change as a result of trying to bring down emissions and adapt to climate change. And so we have to be ready for that. We have to be ready both for the impacts of climate change, the direct impacts, but also for the impacts on jobs.
You are the director of the International Labour Movement's Just Transition Centre. What is a just transition?
A just transition is our concept. It comes out of the labor movement, and over time it's become increasingly linked to the response to climate change. And basically it's about all of the things that need to happen, that workers, that employers, that governments and communities need to do in response to climate change that relate to the world of work. So just to break it down a little bit, it has three key parts. So the first part is that there shouldn't be any discussion about planning for climate change without having workers and their unions at the table and without looking at it through a lens of jobs, social protection, social security, all of the issues that are important for the labor movement. The second thing is that a lot of people, when they think about just transition, they think that it's just about people who today are working in coal mining or coal-fired power, regions that are very dependent on coal as, for jobs, for tax revenue, for livelihood. It's about all of the things that employers need to do, like retaining, retraining, and redeploying workers, like government putting in systems of income support, so unemployment insurance, proper health care, proper public services, diversifying regional economies. The last thing that it's about is the response to climate change is creating and will create even more new jobs and also change jobs that exist today. And so it's not a just transition unless the new jobs are good jobs. So in part, just transition is about reversing these trends of casualization, contractualization, informality of work, and making sure that a job installing solar panels is at least as good as the job that a coal worker has had before. It's important to think about this transition as being an actual transition. A lot of things do need to happen now, So that means, for example, building the alternatives in low emissions power electricity, starting to change the steel industry, the cement industry, the plastics and chemicals industries, so that we use the low-emission technologies we have today and people are trained to use them. Like, all of those things should be happening today, and almost all of those things would be actually good for workers and jobs if they were done right with proper labor standards and proper investments in good jobs.
And that's it, international labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to be even cooler than we were yesterday. We were expecting a high to top out about 54, with overnight lows in the mid to low 30s. Winds will be light and variable, though we did have a wind advisory yesterday that didn't show up too much here in the protected valley where the mothership resides. Mostly or partly cloudy skies with a bit of sun peeking through later in the day, only for a small amount of time. And then a few passing clouds tomorrow, otherwise generally sunny with highs in the mid-50s. And once again, overnight lows in the mid to low 30s. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is at 20 parts per million in the good range, and the daytime UV index is considered low at 1, because if you get any lower than 1, you don't have any. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.08 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 80%. Should add that we're not expecting any rain until maybe rain and snow until maybe mid to late week. So we'll look forward to that. It's always fun, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London. Did you know that Donald Trump is over there right now? They don't like him. Well, the Brexit Vladians do, but everybody else wonders, what the hell? Anyway, London is experiencing 44 degrees and sunny, and it looks like they have a Trump warning. Yeah, they do. Paris is 43 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 61 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 31 and cloudy. Kabul is 39 and fair. Hong Kong is 56 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 52 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 54 and cloudy. And New York is 35 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with a chance of snow. Well, it is wintertime almost now, isn't it, New York? And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays. Thousands took to the streets across Poland yesterday, Sunday, to show solidarity with judges after one was suspended for questioning the ruling party's judicial reforms, in a sign that concerns over the rule of law will mark its second term in power. Since taking office in 2015, the Law and Justice Party, which is a white supremacist party, let's be clear, has been at loggerheads with the European Union over reforms which critics say undermine judicial independence. The suspension of Judge Paweł Józeskian last week brought the issue back to the fore. I believe that law and honesty will win in the end, the judge told protesters in front of the Ministry of Justice in Warsaw. I call on judges, don't let yourselves be frightened. Be independent. Be brave. We are strong. The government has justified the widespread judicial reforms, including how judges are appointed, by saying they are necessary to improve efficiency and to root out the vestiges of the 1945 to 1989 communist era. 89. Yeah, they gotta purge them out. There might be some commies there. Protesters gathered in at least 105 towns and cities, and television coverage showed them waving Polish and EU flags and brandishing placards with slogans such as, "Without law, there is no justice."
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
More anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A rather sad story, to be sure. Unknown gunmen opened fire at the car of a local lawmaker in the center of the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv on Sunday, killing his 3-year-old son. Vyacheslav Sobolev, a businessman and Kyiv regional council lawmaker, was at the wheel of the car when it was attacked. The Ministry of Internal Affairs has not identified the owner of the vehicle or the identity of the victim. But as a result of a gunshot wound, the Ukraine's Ministry of Internal Affairs said on Facebook a child died in a car ambulance on the way to the hospital. Sobolev is a businessman from Donetsk, a flashpoint of pro-Russian insurgency in Ukraine. In 2010 and 2011, he was an executive at Ukraine's state energy company Naftogas. And there have been several murders of well-known figures on the streets of Kyiv since Russia annexed Crimea and pro-Moscow rebellion flared up in East Ukraine in 2014. Pavel Shamaret, a Belarusian journalist known for his criticism of his home country's leadership and his friendship with the slain Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, was killed in a car bomb in Kyiv in 2016. So many convenient shootings, muggings, polonium poisonings, it boggles the mind. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we are going to meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.